thank you to all of you for taking the time and effort to be here today. This couldn't have happened without the Wayne Arts Center, and this show would not have happened at all if it weren't for the leadership of Nancy Campbell. Pam McLean Parker. Pam's efforts really made working with the Wayne Arts Center a museum-quality experience. The other person I want to say thank you to is Terry Peterson, who's here with us. The catalog is the result of Terry's expert design sense, professional skills, and his tremendous patience with my missing deadlines. I want to thank also, of course, all the artists in the exhibit. When I did send out the email, I was so gratified that they immediately responded with gratitude at being included. And that was hugely important to me, that they were sharing my enthusiasm to celebrate the legacy of Arthur DeCosta, who made so much of a difference, not just to the artists on the wall, but so many of you here in this room.
To understand Arthur DeCosta as an artist, you need to know what and how he painted. His subjects, still lives, figure compositions, and portraits have a timeless quality rooted more in poetic reverie than anything in our modern world. Perhaps the most contemporary object he ever painted was the necktie in his famous portrait of Philadelphia Mayor Frank Rizzo. But it's how he painted that truly set him apart. In one sense, he did not paint things at all. He painted how light and air simultaneously reveal and dissolve visual forms. Notice how three-dimensional this gourd appears, with thick paint bringing forth its center, which is closest to the eye, and its soft, transparent edges further from the eye, receding into the shadowed background. His exquisite understanding of color and the technical aspects of pigments suspended in oil were arrived through decades of experimentation and study of art history. He called his approach atmospheric painting and believed its pursuit to be the highest calling for artists. And he shared his ideas with academy students for decades with a missionary zeal. He was a tremendously supportive and generous teacher, and his influence has been substantial. Artist Paul DuSold has organized a fascinating show at the Wayne Arts Center of art by Arthur DeCosta and several of the students who were closest to him. In the show's catalog are essays by the exhibiting artists. I will be reading short excerpts from them as we look at their works. Taryn Day. Arthur was an intellectual, but when he gave feedback, it would usually be sensitively attuned to what a student needed to hear. For example, he seemed to understand that I had some perfectionist tendencies in my work and told me now and then just to do a quick oil sketch for the hell of it. Charles J. When I left the academy, I kept in touch with Mr. DeCosta. If I finished a painting I thought was good enough to show him, I'd give him a call on the phone. He'd invite me over and give me some criticism. I often said to myself, if I had to pick someone for knowledge about painting when I'd go into a museum, it would be Mr. DeCosta. Patrick Connors. 7 pairs was the start of one of the most important relationships of my life. For the next 3 decades, Arthur gave generously of his time, knowledge, and shared his varied interests with me that extended beyond the practice of painting to rose cultivation, food, music, dance, and thought. To this day, Arthur's imparted wisdom and insights still resonate in my head. Stanley Beelan. The memory of Arthur demonstrating painting has stayed with me for decades. The old Peel House, 1976, just out of high school. I had acquired some skill and knowledge of drawing in high school, but no instruction in painting. Watching Arthur demonstrate was a revelation. Beautiful magic. It was a gift to be able to watch an experienced painter to proceed through a painting from start to finish. J. Clayton Bright. As a self-taught sculptor, I realized I wanted to learn painting in a more organized way. The Pennsylvania Academy seemed a good place to start. In the school setting, Arthur was quite formal. However, after he retired, I had the opportunity to get to know him well. What I discovered was a quiet, gentle person with a tremendous knowledge of painting. He had the kind of knowledge that could only be derived from hands-on experimentation combined with an instinct for the subject. Bo Bartlett. The older I get, the more I appreciate what Arthur DeCosta was doing. He was carving out a narrow path for many students to find their own voices, and when sung together in unison, it was more than just a way through. It was a chorus. It was a movement. I'm honored to be a small part of that movement, the Philadelphia School, where the overriding tenet was and still is, forget not beauty.
Forget not beauty. Forget not beauty, lest she pass you by and leave you as she found
you. Russell Rashawn. Arthur's portrait and figure classes set the foundation for my skills as a portrait painter. One day in school, Arthur painted a copy of a Franz Hals portrait as a class demonstration. At the end of class, he presented it to me as a gift, and I proudly display it above the doorway to my studio. Each day as I go to work, I look up and I remember Arthur and the valuable lessons he passed on to me. Rebecca Devoren Strong. It wasn't until I taught painting at a small rural art center that I fully realized the brilliance of Mr. DeCosta's teaching methods. I taught the first 2 lessons from his color study classes. It was truly remarkable how just those 2 lessons gave my students a firm beginning in painting, a vocabulary of painting terms, and an introduction to a myriad of technical concepts and skills. Vincent Desiderio. I never took a class with Arthur DeCosta. However, I ate lunch with him at the Academy practically every day. I looked forward to seeing him and was told that he felt the same way. His amazing ability to articulate the vagaries of technique reminded me of Charles Locke Eastlake. His words have played in my mind ever since. He spoke of the logic of the paint, the organization of the light mass, of scumble, glaze, and ultimately that of which we must will of the materials. Wade Schumann. I've been teaching art for about 30 years. Much of what I understand and teach about painting came from Arthur. Color temperature, materials, chromatic development, palettes, grounds, mediums, all these technical things. But the most important knowledge I received from Arthur was really about a sensibility, his deep and truly romantic love of the art of painting, the act of painting. This romantic love of the act of painting and respect for its substance and history was the greatest gift a teacher could have given me. Robert Simon. When I attended PAFA, sculpture students had no formal interaction with Arthur. Regardless, I was drawn to his weekly painting crits, and as I had no paintings to show, he agreed one day to look at my drawings. Though I'd never known him to critique sculpture, he examined the work carefully and then announced, "Your sculpture is not like your drawing." This did not sound favorable, so I asked him to elaborate. "In drawing, you readily describe the form, but I don't see any comparable effect in the sculpture. Your drawing is ahead of your sculpture." This 20-minute critique with Arthur proved to be the most generative and durable of any I received in 4 years at the art school. Carol Gaines. Arthur DeCosta had a profound influence on my life outlook and way of painting. He was a genius in his demonstrations, teaching various techniques as well as how to see and find beauty. For me, the revelation that there is so much beauty, tactile beauty, in the act of painting, apart from the end result, is one of the most valuable insights I found through Arthur DeCosta's influence. Nicholas James Harris. Throughout my time at the Academy, he had been among my most valued critics and a solid source of technical guidance. During those student years, I always respectfully addressed him as Mr. DeCosta. But as I took flight from the Academy's nest, he was definitely one of the people I wanted to keep in my life. So I asked him, "May I call you Arthur?" He thought a minute, then simply said with a shrug, "Yes." Al Gurry. Each art teacher contributes pieces of the whole to their students. Arthur DeCosta gave me more than I could imagine when I arrived at PAFA as a shy 20-year-old from the Midwest. His presentation of painting demonstrations that really made sense taught me what a teacher can do for students in a very practical manner. From Arthur, I learned to research and explore art media, traditions, and history. As a painter, he gave me the tools to understand my place in the traditions of painting and to find my own voice within them. Stuart Shills. I met Arthur DeCosta on entering the Academy in 1977. From the vantage point of 2021, his legacy to me is remembering that the interior of the visual imagination is where I want to be spending my time, and that standing before a painting for both a painter and viewer is like coming to a shore by the sea, where, in order to go in, we remove our shoes, leave words behind, and start swimming. Doug Farron. The myth of Arthur that I heard often enough after I got to the school was that he could teach the techniques of the old masters, which in fact he knew a great deal about, but what Arthur talked about day to day, and that were much more valuable ideas for young students like myself, were entirely brass tacks, like sitting my ass down and spending the time to paint a complex bit of wood filigree right, like glazes and velaturas being salad dressing to the painting underneath, that mastery of direct painting was the single most important skill an artist could have. Paul DuSold. I remember one of my early visits to Arthur in his home when for some reason I was left alone in the studio. I remember looking around at all of these small figurative paintings, dozens and dozens of them, surrounding me in this small room just under the roof of the house. I thought to myself, I want to live here in this room. I want to live in the universe of these paintings.
I too was a student of Arthur DeCosta, and back in 1978, my identical twin brother came up to Philadelphia to visit me from Florida.
No one at that time knew that John was an identical twin, all of his fellow artists at PAFA and his teachers. And so we're walking down the hallway thinking maybe we could try to fool some people. And he goes, "Oh, that's Mr. DeCosta coming." And John ducked around the corner. He said, "Go talk to him."
Yeah, I told Jim that Mr. DeCosta was this great portrait painter. So Jim was armed with a little foreknowledge.
So I go up and say, "Oh, hey, Mr. DeCosta, how's it going?" And he goes, "Oh, good, John, how are you?" "Fine." "Mr. DeCosta, can I ask you a question? Can you tell subtle differences in, say, people's skin tone?" And he goes, "Well, yes, of course I can." And at that point,
I pop out from behind the wall and say, "Mr. DeCosta, who are you talking to?"
And he looks back and forth, and just gets this huge beaming smile.
The whole class is laughing their heads off, and he takes it so well.
Hours later, we pass him again, and he's still beaming.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful, friendly, kind, encouraging person.
Yes.
We love you, Arthur. Or I never was allowed to call him Arthur. Mr. DeCosta.
Forget Not Beauty, The Legacy of Arthur DeCosta, will be up through November 14th, 2021 at the Wayne Art Center.